In 2004, when I was in 4th grade, my mom pointed out a copy of Warriors Into the Wild in a bookstore, and I was hooked. I was always an animal kid, directing other kids in convoluted playground games where we'd pretend to be wild horses or a pack of magical tigers. And so a book series about wild cats living in a complex hierarchical society led to a goldmine of creative games for all of us. We'd pick the most dramatic and emotional scenes from the books and act them out on the playground, with each person selecting their favorite character. This fostered a love of directing in me. The part of the games I loved most was setting the scene, positioning my actors, and yelling action. Soon, though, my friends grew out of battle cats and moved on to other cooler, teen-appropriate interests. I continued to absorb myself in the melodramatic world of the clans and wanted nothing more than to keep playing my playground games. I began to reenact the scenes with my stuffed animals instead. Before long, I hit on an idea. If I moved the plush, took my hand away, and then took a picture, I could make a crude stop-motion animation that gave the illusion of movement. I drew little mouths on the photos in MS Paint and played them back in Windows Movie Maker. This still didn't really satisfy me. No matter what I did, the characters were still lifeless plushies and looked like it. To really communicate these stories, I'd need to draw them. This was around the exact same time that I discovered Kimba the White Lion on public access TV. I studied the low-budget 60s animation with its low frame count and realized that I could mimic it. I could do something similar with warrior cats. Using Kimba episodes as reference at first, I started making pseudo-trailers and opening themes for my Imagined Warriors series. It was never supposed to be a real thing, it was just for fun. I'd work on these little projects as soon as I got home from school, every day. Sometimes I'd get up early so I could work on them before class. With my first trailer finished, I was still unsatisfied. I realized I had nobody to share it with. In 2005, YouTube hit the scene, part of the new breed of social media websites that would explode in the late 2000s and early 2010s. YouTube was the first accessible video platform for the common person, and to kid me, it held endless potential for self-expression. The idea of a video-based forum where a person could receive feedback from other users was so fresh and unheard of to me that I dove into it with all the passion and energy my 12-year-old brain could muster. When I started out, I was the only Warriors animator on the whole website. There were some slideshow makers, and some people who acted out the stories with toys, but a distinct lack of animators. I called my series Warriors of the Forest, because I wanted to differentiate my version from the original. I uploaded my first animated Warriors trailer in 2007, which was really more of a slideshow, and I was totally unprepared for the response I got. Hundreds of comments, right from the get-go, ranging from "make more" to "is this official?" to "all the character designs are wrong, how dare you?" The number of comments was totally overwhelming to 12-year-old me. I had greatly underestimated the number of Warriors fans worldwide and the level of their devotion to the series. I read every comment, took everything to heart, and wanted to please every single viewer. I started making my Into the Wild animated series with the goal of eventually completing the entire book. My primary motivation for making it was to make my small viewership happy. This was way too exciting for me at the time. To a kid in a 300-person town in rural Canada, the world very suddenly seemed a lot bigger. I was a typical wannabe emo kid at this age, and that really came through in my early character designs. I initially gave all the cats hair because I thought it gave them more attitude for some reason. Hair on cats ended up being pretty ubiquitous in the fandom from 2007 to 2010 for some reason. Now, because YouTube was such a new platform, and kids were so used to their entertainment coming from professional sources, a lot of folks didn't seem to understand that what they were watching was made by someone prepubescent. It's silly to look back on it now, and difficult to believe anyone could have interpreted my MS Paint drawings as a professional artwork, but to a lot of young viewers in the mid-2000s, amateur animation by kids just wasn't on the radar. I began to get a lot of critique comments that went through the animation in detail, pointing out every flaw in anatomy or composition, comments that said I should be ashamed of my poor quality work. There used to be a lot more of this kind of comment. People today often comment on how negative the Warriors fandom is, but trust me, it is toned down significantly with increased understanding of how fan artists operate for free on their own time. Very shortly after I uploaded my first episodes of Into the Wild, there was a flurry of activity. The Warriors YouTube community began to spring up. Early contributors like Tribble of Doom, Dark Kakiri, and Flightfoot Warrior began to appear. I was a pretty sheltered 12-year-old, and all this sudden internet attention understandably spooked my parents. For my emotional safety, they forbade me from interacting with anyone online as a condition of keeping up my YouTube channel. Though I wasn't allowed to respond, I just couldn't ignore the comments. I checked them at least 5 times a day, every day. Before breakfast, at lunch hour, after class, before dinner, after dinner, the comments swirled in my mind all day. This was arguably worse than being allowed to respond. The general narrative of the comments started to turn sour because I was not allowed to moderate them. AlliKatNya is such a rich snob. AlliKatNya hates their fans. AlliKatNya gets everything they want, and their parents buy them expensive software. These types of comments festered and attracted attention. The more venomous ones resulted in many sleepless nights, thinking over what I would say to defend myself if I was allowed to. Soon it was the fun and hip thing to do to compare others to AlliKatNya. Other Warriors animators' videos were soon filled with comments to the tune of, "This is way better than AlliKatNya could ever make." Then the impersonation started. People started making exact replicas of my YouTube channel under names that appeared similar to mine, downloaded my icon, background, and channel description. They'd then use these accounts to comment horrible things on other people's Warriors videos, usually attacks on character, physical appearance, or something equally shallow. People began to attribute the behavior to me, and negative comments on my videos increased. I'd report the channels to YouTube, but as soon as one was blocked, another would pop up. I began frantically registering all variants of AlliKatNya as usernames ahead of time so that they couldn't be used against me later. A little while later, a user sent me my own home address and a message with the statement, "I know where you live. Stop making animations or I'll come find you." Nothing ever came of this, and I still don't know where they got my address. I tried my best to focus on the animation, the reason I was on YouTube in the first place. By this time, however, my primary motivation for animating wasn't creativity. It was pleasing an audience that expected something from me. Around the time I finished episode 5, SSS Warrior Cats appeared on the scene and changed the status quo. It was by far the most polished Warriors animation available at the time. I think the arrival of this more polished series allowed viewers to better understand that YouTube animators were amateur hobbyists, and shortly after the arrival of SSS, the aggressive negativity in the fandom simmered down. Sometimes when I'm reminiscing, I'll check up on the YouTube community. The creativity I see today is just astonishing. Huge projects, collaborations with 25-plus animators, near studio-quality work. If 12-year-old me could have seen what would have become of the tiny community, they'd cry with joy. To this day, I'll see the occasional star on the forehead character design, or someone who still embraces emo hair on cats, and it gives me a little burst of energy to keep creating. There's a lot more to tell about the earliest days of the community, but I can only tell my perspective. I know there are lots of people who were around then that are still active on YouTube, and it'd be amazing to hear other stories from the bizarre microcosm that is the Warriors animation fandom.